Good evening and welcome back to the AfriCanadian Resource Center. And as we do every night, we obviously bring you news, updates, and let you know what's going on within the AfriCanadian community, and obviously also what's going on with COVID. And as we come to you this evening, Toronto and Peel, we are going back to lockdown. Yeah. I'm not excited about that, obviously. I'm sure none of us is. And from what we're learning, it's definitely a lockdown. We don't know for how long, but we were just receiving updates just a few hours, about an hour ago, where the Ontario government says that it's moving COVID hotspots Toronto and Peel region into lockdown, shuttering businesses such as salons and gyms and moving restaurants to takeout only and malls to curbside pickups. Ford also said that the province will spare no expenses to help businesses that are forced to close. He went on to talk about 600 million fund to help lockdown businesses with fixed costs such as property taxes. The new measure are set to arrive as Ontario reports 1,418 new cases of COVID-19 on Friday, along with 8 new deaths related to the virus. There were 400 new cases in Peel region, 393 in Toronto, and 168 in York region. One good thing, I guess, about all these numbers is the fact that Peel region is reporting more cases than Toronto. This is a new, I guess that's the trend, because I think from what we heard, closer to the airport was the hotspot, and so it makes sense. But also, that's really tough for the Peel region to be having more numbers than Toronto, knowing obviously that Toronto has more population. But overall, obviously, Toronto is heading back to lockdown. Pretty much, we are not supposed to go to work unless we have to, so all of the emergency or the businesses that are required to function will be operating. The rest are in lockdown. We went through this obviously earlier in the year. We were hoping to be done with this, but yeah. Anyways, I think if you're looking for more details, make sure to reach out to local officials. We're looking at Toronto, we're looking at Peel, but for those of you that are in areas like York, which is obviously not locked down tonight, and the rest of Ontario, the rest of Canada, definitely reach out to your officials and see what are the updates, what are the statuses of your city and region. In the meantime, for the rest of us, we're stuck at home, but I think for the RSHC, we will continue to report. Obviously, we are doing a lot of our interviews via Zoom, via the platforms that are virtual, so we're able to continue to report, to bring you information within the community. So we're going to continue to do that until we deem it otherwise. So in the meantime, yeah, you will see us Monday to Friday until December 14th, if I remember correctly. So that is the end of our actual program. December 11th, but we'll be here until December 15th. And then, of course, we'll continue to bring you updates on an ongoing basis until our platform, the AfriCanadian Resource Center, is ready. This is for, obviously, continental African Canadian leaders, organizations, and businesses to help connect all our people and provide a platform that actually allows tools and resources. And resources come in many ways, by the way, whether it's experts, funding, whatever you deem it. I think our goal is to make sure that our communities are able to access as much of that information as the rest of the Canadian society. So that's what we have for you as far as the news tonight. We definitely hope for everyone to be safe at home, to keep the distance, keep wearing the mask as we're being asked. But also, let's figure out a way. Obviously, this is. I feel like all of these measures have not obviously provided the solution. So, what could be the solution to come out of this pandemic? Let's all think hard. I'm sure scientists and doctors and all who are responsible for making sure that we're safe are doing their work. But for us at home, also, we can do some of the measures to make sure that we're safe and our loved ones as well. So yeah, we hope to get out of this soon. And meantime, let's bring you our program today. We are bringing you a member of the Toronto community who is running for a councillor in the Ward 22. We wanted to talk to him. He's an AfriCanadian who is running for that seat at the City Hall. And so we wanted to talk about what his plan is, what he plans to do for the community. And that's what we're going to bring you. But first, let's do what I promised, which is go and talk about my journey 4 years ago when I walked from Toronto to Montreal to raise awareness of PTSD. I'm just going to give you a bit of intro on what we want to share, and then I'm going to come back towards the end of after the interview and show you the rest of the video. But it's just to remind the audience of how our organization started, what pushed me to obviously do the work and to raise awareness, but obviously eventually to work towards having a center, which is our goal. But yeah, this is day 2 of 17 days in 2016, my walk from Toronto to Montreal.
All right, so I just wanted to update you guys on today. One, I started a bit late today. I started about 4:40 in picketing, simply because there was a few things I had to straighten up from yesterday. Just make sure that I can actually move without a problem. So that I took care of it today. Also, I had to take sleep enough hours now. Yesterday I didn't sleep enough. I was just busy doing other things. So I'm here now, trying to see how far I can get to tonight. Because I'm yet to determine where I'm gonna stop. Simply because I want to do as much hours as I can today, without spending too much energy, because tomorrow I want to wake up early and I want to start fresh, just make sure that I can keep my schedule. So I am in Whitby right now. If you've ever been in Whitby, I don't know if you can tell, but I am on a street called Dundas Street. Dundas and Lupin will be Lupin Drive. And so yeah, I'm in Whitby. I should be in Oshawa in about an hour and a half, probably less than an hour and a half. We'll see how it goes, and then probably take a break in Oshawa, eat something, and then I'll go. I keep going to Curtis or Brimsville. My goal is to probably stop at Brimsville. Initially I wanted to stop in Newcastle, but that would be, I don't want to do too much hours today, simply because I want to do more tomorrow. So the best place I'm thinking is between Curtis and Brimsville. All right. Like I say, I didn't update. I did a few videos here and there. I'll probably post those later on. Right now I'm actually recording. I don't know if you can see my GoPro behind me. I'm recording on the GoPro, and so I'll update some of those tonight or tomorrow morning. And just keep the walk, keep raising awareness. I met a few people today, very inspiring. I forgot to mention, yesterday I met this guy that he just wanted to know what I was doing. And he's like, can I buy you anything, please? And I'm like, not really, because usually there's a lot of things that I don't eat. I don't know if you guys know, but I don't eat meat, I don't eat dairy products. There's a lot of things that I don't eat, just to stay healthy, for the purpose of being healthy. So he's like, can I buy you something? I'm like, sure, but I'm like, maybe green tea or something. And anyways, the guy went and he got got something and they thank me. Many people are doing that right now. I just want to know what I'm doing, because the further I'm getting from Toronto, the more people are wondering what this guy is doing. Because while I was in Toronto, I think people just think I'm advertising for some company or something. They don't really understand why I'm doing this. And also, if you see, I am not wearing anything in front, so they don't get to see or know what I'm doing until they see that.
Right, so I'm obviously talking about my challenges on the road, and I was talking about how I was not wearing a vest. I eventually actually got a vest from one of the OPP officers after a lot of complaints from the drivers. Got a lot of offers for food, got a lot of support. I mean, I'm telling you, like, this journey showed me a different Canada than the one I had in my head, and it's the first time I actually realized that Canada was a home for me. Really, you meet incredible people. Not for first, like, there was people who would be like, yo, honking and honking, and then I'll go to a restaurant, they'll be like, yo, I was so pissed, I saw you, I was like, what is this guy? But then I'll go there and they'll buy me food and stuff, and they're like, oh man, they want to want to know more about what I was doing. And so yeah, it was a challenge for me initially, but eventually people got used to it and I got used to it, and I just learned to tell the story and being able to share what I was doing, raising awareness. And yeah, so we are still at it. We'll go back to that video so you can see a little bit more, obviously, some of my stories. But let's now go to our interview with Rocco Achampong, who is running for councillor at Ward 22, that is in Scarborough. Take it away. All right, Rocco, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you making the time to be with us here at the AfriCanadian Resource Center. And we wanted to reach out and really talk to you about some of the work you're looking to do as you're running for councillor in Scarborough. Please tell us more about yourself and what you do in the community.
Well, I'm a 42-year-old man, married, a father of 3. I'm a lawyer. I practice litigation in the province of Ontario, and some other provinces as well. And in terms of being involved in the community, I've always been involved in some way or the other, in community issues, since I was, I don't know, since university. I've done some. I remember I've always run for office in terms of also organizing the community. I believe organizing the Black Students Association at the University of Toronto was my first big thing for the Black community and the African Canadian community. Yeah, no, unless you have pinpointed questions, I'm not very good at speaking about myself. I think it's a bit of a vanity exercise without a specific pinpoint. So, yeah, I'm just an ordinary man.
Yeah, no worries. I think it's, for us, we always try to see where what's the background of the individuals that we invite onto our program. Obviously, you're running for the office. You're looking to do some of the changes in the community. What maybe tell our audience what inspired you to run for councillor at the Ward 22 in Scarborough?
Well, if you take a look at the demographics in the specific ward I'm running for, Scarborough Agincourt, it is very immigrant heavy. And I think most African Canadians, with the exception of Nova Scotians, North Ontarians, whether it be from Buxton or some Oro-Medonte or some of these rather small towns, you're part of the history of Canada, or the story of Canada, really starts post 1970 when Africans started to trickle into the country in the 1980s when there was mass migration. What motivated me is one, being a practicing attorney. One is equipped with certain skills to advocate on behalf of individuals or even corporations with respect to specific pleadings or specific causes of complaint. But the skill is transferable insofar as extending it to a ward where you now have what will effectively become 105,000 clients when, who have a case for poverty reduction, who have a case for better childcare, who have a case for better transit, who have a case for neglect insofar as being a suburb within the city of Toronto. And just to make sure, I'm just, they just need a fierce fighter to show up for them. And I've always been a fierce fighter in the ring, either in the court of law, and I hope now to extend that to the public.
I mean, so when you think of, obviously, for us as the African Canadians, and like you say, a lot of us, we can trace our arrival to Canada post 1970s, and you say some people got it here a bit earlier in the 60s, but majority of us are here from recent. When you look at the issues of African Canadians, in your work as a councillor, what you hope to do, how do you hope to address some of our challenges, especially when you look at the socioeconomic challenges that our people really face compared to the rest of the Canadians? How do you hope to at least address some of those issues on a local level?
Well, I often say that questions often embed their own answers. So when you ask me the question you just asked me, you embed within it and expressly state the notion of social economic disadvantages. And there are a lot of social economic disadvantages. There is 10% unemployment within the writing, heightened and even more so, I think, been at twice the rate for quote unquote racialized minorities, even though I don't like to use that term. So in terms of poverty and being poor, the Black African Canadians in general usually have it the worst in any system,
Mm.
and there are obviously there's a historical basis for that. There are social economic bases for that. There are systemic historical. I don't, at the risk of repeating myself, historical systemic basis for that. But I do think that we are aptly placed in the 21st century to do something about that because we're becoming more creative, we're becoming more open. The project of inclusiveness has been going on for some time now, post mid 1990s onwards, um, and there's much we can do. So these are the issues I hope to identify with respect only to African Canadians, but let's not forget, as a local councillor, I represent quite a lot of other groups. Now, Scarborough Agincourt is a ward with roughly 65 to 70% of the ward being a minority population or recent immigrant population. It has a depressed economic standing within the 25 ward structure that is the city of Toronto, and they need a fighter. So I just felt a calling to bring my skills to bear, and I think in short order we'll be able to do something to make sure that they get their fair share of the city resources to improve their lives, and above all else, is to bring some dignity to their standing and to their station.
Another question on that. So we know, obviously, anti-Black racism, the federal government has done a lot of work to address that, to sort of create a bridge between the disparities between our communities and the general society here in Canada. When we look at some of the challenges, especially in Scarborough, I've lived in Scarborough, my early years here, I was in Scarborough. The issue of police brutality is also does not escape Scarborough. Obviously, there is a lot of work that has been done. But if you look at the people that get in trouble with the law, most of the time you see a lot of young Black men. You say that there is a lot of people who are mostly from minority. Once again, you and I agree. I don't even like to use the word minority, but they say Africans, Black people in Scarborough area. How do we change that? You obviously, not specifically you as a councillor, but us as a Black community, how do we help change that so we are not always found in these areas in large numbers compared to, let's say, being in business or other areas that we should be thriving in instead of thriving in trouble and being in trouble with the law?
Well, it's a triple-edged sword, isn't it? On the one hand, there is quite the entrepreneurial ethic within the African Canadian community, quite a lot of business. And two, there are those that fall by the wayside whom and their motives are only looking to steal bread to feed your family. and then you have those that are just genuinely who they are, whether or not they were born with privilege or not born with privilege, they would do what they're doing regardless. They would push the envelope, and those are the ones we would call criminals in the grand scheme of things. So the main thing is making sure city government and city resources are accessible to the population. Where, for example, there's a business that wants to start, African Canadian owned or minority owned, whatever the case may be, making sure that you as a counselor, and particularly as a lawyer, bringing my skills to bear to assist them. Right? There is a beautiful thing about my skill set that translates well into being a counselor. Because I do this on an individual basis for individual people, admittedly for profit, but now it's being just transferred into a public purpose skill set, and with a view to assisting not only African Canadians, but generally just people in general to just have some dignity and just do well in your lives. Because whether or not you're African Canadian or not, I think you would agree with me that part of being African is recognizing the humanity in another human being, wherever they come from, right?
Yeah.
And and that's who I am. I think that's also the Toronto ethic. We all, I mean, the thing with it's okay. So it's public housing heavy in Scarborough, Agincourt, and today I just finished canvassing. And, you would have the black person, the white person, the Indian person, the Tamil person, the just generally quote unquote racialized groups. So it's not, and white, like it's not particular to one color, nor is it particular to one ethnicity or a culture. So bringing that skill set to bear to just help lift people up, because I think we're a truly privileged city. And unless you have the right consciousness at the table, thinking about the whole of the peoples, rather than just principle and theory, and whether or not some people get left behind is just a casualty of implementation of theory. When you have the right consciousness at the table, more people tend to benefit. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I would say this just maybe to be clear for me. I definitely I agree with you. Obviously, as a representative, you want to represent everybody. And we had me and my circle. We always argued about looking at the American politics and looking at people like Obama, whether these people did the work that they were supposed to do for everybody, or did they really focus on a group of. I think for me, obviously, coming in representing the AfriCanadian, advocating for the AfriCanadian, I'm approaching you as an AfriCanadian within the scope of obviously knowing that you're representing all of Torontonians or Scarborough Ward 22 when you do win. But I'm also looking at it saying, when you look at the general society, we are always left behind, which is the point I made earlier. And so looking at it from that angle, I always look at somehow what are the tangibles for people that are in power. For example, right now, the Rwandan Canadian Healing Center, which is the platform that brings on this platform that we're on right now, we were able to help communities in our community, our members, organizations in our community, get funding that they would otherwise have not had. And the only reason we were able to do that is because we saw the need and the lack of refunds coming into those communities. In this case, I'm talking about the Rwandan Canadian and the African Canadian community. And so if we didn't address it by focusing on our community and looking at it overall, these members are still left out. So that's why I'm asking you these questions. But I definitely agree with you as a representative. You have to represent everybody. But for us as individuals advocating for our communities, we still have to approach individuals like you from our perspective, reading our own communities. That way, when we do build, I believe when we get to the top, we can always connect with other communities, obviously, and create a better Canadian society. But I still think that for us, we still want to look at people who can actually not longer advocate for us, but actually helping create different resources for communities like ours.
Well, I'm hoping there's a question in there somewhere.
Now, maybe what's your opinion on that?
Well, look,
do you agree that Go ahead, please.
My door is always open to anyone that wants to knock on it. Black, Asian, brown, or blue. I really, Yes, but I also understand that I am an African Canadian, uh, and again, my door will be open to anyone that wants to access it. And that's the one thing I'm going to try to do. That's the one. When I ran in 2010, right out of law
Mm,
school, and one of the
mm,
candidates was Rob Ford. And one of the things I liked about Rob Ford was the fact that Rob Ford was the most accessible politician in the history of Canadian politics, and I don't say that in hyperbole. Um,
mm,
he always had two staffers behind him with phones returning calls. He was accessible to everyone, and
mm,
that's what I intend on being, accessible to everyone. Am I a black man? Yes, absolutely. That's not going to change about me. That's a fundamental birth characteristic. That's a lineage characteristic. That cannot change. My family's lineage extends through from Ghana of recent vintage, but on the continent from more ancient vintage. Um, but if my door is only open to African Canadians, then I'm not doing my job. I think what part of
yeah,
the
and that's not what we're asking for ever at all.
all right, so that part of the African Canadian ethic is that we usually have a very, as a community, an open door policy. Do you
Mm,
understand? And that's probably why Africa has been
absolutely.
exploited for so long, because we're just very welcoming. But I'll be very welcoming to all groups, and as best as possible, set a good example as an individual, as a human being, for others to follow from the community. But I'm looking to be a counselor for the city of Toronto, and it is my hope.
Abs-
I hope the African
mm,
Canadian community comes out and supports me, and I hope you guys come out and support me. Um,
mm,
but it is about, and my agenda really would be about poverty reduction and poor people. Um, they need help and they need an advocate. I don't see an advocate at all. Some of the
mm,
parties are very disappointing. It is riddled with out of touch notions of how to limit and reduce poverty. I
mm,
came in contact with poverty, hardcore poverty today when I'm knocking on doors. There are people really struggling,
mm,
and
mm.
they need a champion, and that's exactly what I'm going to be. And there's an
And
old saying. There's an old
mm,
saying I think it's attributed to Abraham Lincoln, if I'm not mistaken, and that the Lord prefers poor people precisely because He makes so many of them, right? So, and it just so happens that, and look, I mean, the condition of poverty in the African Canadian community is not permanent. Um, my mother often says no condition is permanent, and that is very true.
mm,
It is the African Canadian population, insofar as it is truly African Caribbean and not borderline indigenously North American or from the slave
mm,
trade within North America, um, is new, and yet you will see
mm,
that in higher learning institutions, be it in universities, colleges. Um, just higher learning institutions in general, you will find that there is a per capita misrepresentation or excess representation of African Canadians because we tend to excel, right, when given the
mm,
opportunity. And those
mm,
institutions have opened up the doors, society is opening up the doors. There's a worldwide recognition that much has to be done in the Western world. And, you know, uh, the promised land is there. Um,
mm,
uh, we're not there yet, but
mm.
rest assured that we are on the journey. That's what I would like to say.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think for us, seeing another African Canadian running for an office is obviously something that why we reached out to you. We wanted to talk to you, but also obviously we want to know more about what you want to do, what you want to achieve for all of the members that you're going to be representing. Maybe tell us a little bit. What do you think the response, the COVID response, has been within the Ward 22? Would you have done it any different? How do you plan to do it any different? So for people to maybe get the difference, because obviously you're saying you're seeing a lot of poverty, and we know there's a lot of that's going on. Obviously COVID has stopped a lot of businesses. I can imagine restaurants closing down is not fun for local communities. How do you approach that as a councillor?
Well, here's the thing. That's the kind of question that my campaign manager would say is not helpful. um, precisely because this thing will fundamentally it will be online, correct? Right.
Yes.
So um, in times of emergency, even if you have something to say, you got to back the government and hope you're doing the right thing, right? And
Mm,
but I would have certainly taken a different approach uh, with respect to how we approach the emergency.
mm,
I would have been more targeted from the very beginning. But to be fair, and to be fair to the government, they didn't have all the information at the very beginning. But I remember
mm,
flying out of the country in February, and there were other countries dealing with this in a much more serious manner than we were dealing with. I
mm.
remember returning back to the country, and the only question they asked me at customs when you put your passport in the machine was, "Have you been to China in 3 weeks?" I'm like, "Get lost," like obviously
Yeah.
not, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, and that was the extent of our COVID protocol. So
Mm,
there was much the government could answer for in the long term, and I hope there's a public inquiry to explore our response to it, just so there are lessons
mm,
learned for the future, because this is not the only pandemic that will be. Um,
mm.
but I mean, in terms of second guessing the government on an online program that will certainly be posted and very available during this election is not exactly what my campaign manager or council is wise at the moment. But we can
No,
have a
that's good.
conversation after this is done.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, we want you to do well, and I think some of these are things that I've seen when you are in action, anyways. And I think our hope is that you do well and obviously represent your community. And I would love to see because again, I not grew up, but I lived in Scarborough for at least what's that? Maybe almost 10 years, and I know Scarborough, and it's not a community that I would say I hope to go back to live into until maybe it changes, because there's a lot of poverty you see, and the question is it something that is organic, or like what is the issue? So having somebody look at that and say, you know what, this needs to change, is always music to, especially for me who grew up there, to my ear. So really wish you all the best. And maybe my last question to you is, looking forward, looking at our community as a Torontonian, where do you think we go from here post-COVID? How do we recover? Do we do better? Um, uh, how do you project our community going forward?
I would never be concerned with the black community. I mean, if you take a look,
Oh,
the
I mean the
the best.
Toronto community. I mean the Toronto community overall.
All right. Well, whew. Well, let's take a look. Uh, we have been sustained by the federal government's program,
Mm,
right? I think
mm.
if it wasn't for the federal government, there would be a revolution. To be fair, there would be. Um,
What do you mean by that? Because
because
I know on the south side there is no programs, and we're not seeing any revolution unless it's coming. I don't know, but.
well, number one, it's coming from the federal government standpoint on the south side, but you
Mm,
also have to see that there are 50. They're a federalized governmental system, so they have individualized programs on a state-to-state basis. So, and I can't
mm,
speak to what Massachusetts is doing or Texas is doing, whatever the case may be. Um,
mm,
but on our end, we are also a federalized system, but the federal government has taken the lead.
mm,
It's spared the provincial government from having to fund.
mm,
Forgive me, I've hardly slept for the past week. It spared the provincial government from having to fund
mm,
uh, these social safety net programs that have kept people afloat.
mm,
Otherwise, it would have been a rebellion, with all due respect. And the minute, I mean, we are roughly at $400 billion in excess spending. I mean, we have a
mm,
$400 billion deficit. Um, the taps will be turned off. Whether or not the prime minister wants to turn it off or not, the bureaucrats will turn it off, because the country has to
mm,
be here 150 years from
mm.
now,
Yeah.
and somebody has to pay for that debt. Um,
Mm,
and they will increase immigration to increase the tax base, and that's why they've set a target of 1.3 million over the next 3 years, which is a significant increase historically
mm,
over any and all governments. Um,
mm,
but where are we going to go? Um, we're going to have to be very, very business friendly. and I'm going to be very business friendly. I'm a friend of business. We're going to have to get a way of entrepreneurs to create, uh, foment the conditions of creativity, financially profitable creativity, and not be so taxing at the front end. Perhaps at the back end, when we see some recovery and people doing better, we might get in there and say, hey, it's time to pay off this rather nasty $500 billion bill that we've acquired on account of COVID. But I don't worry about Toronto at all. I do worry, however, that and the question will be on the ballot in 2022 when it's time to answer the question of how we go forward, because there will be significant pressure to bear on what the city and what the provincial government's going to do, and you're going to need somebody that's going to fight for every dollar, every cent, every penny that could possibly be put towards fostering an environment and providing some level of support for these job creators, and that has always been small business, either in Canada or in the United States. So, great question, by the way. But I'll give you that vision in 2022. But in the meantime, I'm trying to win Scarborough Agincourt.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that.
I look forward to you coming to knock on doors. Since you're from Scarborough, you should have a few friends there that should vote for me.
I used to be from Scarborough. I'm in Mississauga now, but I would definitely love to. I would love to. Let us know. I mean, if it's an open thing where we can actually have time, we would love to. We would love to even cover you, see what you're doing in the community. I think it's something we really want to do more of. And also, obviously, maybe tell myself, tell the audience, what should we do next? What should be the next step? I know you have a website that's coming up, but what are the things that you want people to do as far as the action is concerned?
Get on the website, www.voterocco.ca. It's under construction as we speak because there's just so much information to put out there. But just put your information in the notify me portion or get involved portion, and we'll contact you and come knock on doors. It's a ground game. This whole by-election is a ground game. It's getting your votes out. It's not about sitting around. It's not a gab fest. It is a ground game, period. And I think we have roughly 56 to 57 days until election day. If you can come knock on doors, knock on 100 doors for me, I'll appreciate that. If you want to come take one building and say I'm going to be responsible for speaking to every tenant, I'll appreciate that. But we got work to do.
Absolutely. We will definitely do that. We would share, obviously, this. Hopefully we can reach. We're going to target people within your area. So at least we make sure that people can actually get your message. And if we can come and knock doors with you, we'll definitely look at that as well. But for sure, anybody who's listening to this, make sure you go to that website. Check out some of the work that Rocco is doing. And of course, make sure to support for us, for the AfriCanadians, support one of our own. We need more of our people at the council level because, again, obviously he's representing everybody, as he said, but we know sometimes you need people, as he said, his door is going to be more open. And he said he's business friendly. I want people who are business friendly. One of the reasons why I didn't mind Radford is because of that. And, I think sometimes our people get caught up in parties as opposed to what we actually need, tangibles. And so we have somebody that can actually help us to get to that. Why not make sure that they actually can be able to run and win elections? So thank you so much, Rocco, for joining us.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And all the best. Good luck with the election.
God bless, Kizito.
Amen. Thanks so much.
All right, so that was our interview with Rocco. We did that yesterday, and as we said, really try, if you are in Scarborough, reach out, support. Obviously, he's looking to change to help communities, especially the poor neighborhoods and the Ward 22. So all our best to you, Rocco, and we, as we said, we promise if we can. Obviously, we're now in lockdown, but if we can, we would love to come and knock doors with you, see some of your constituency and obviously talk to them as well. That was our interview. We hope you enjoyed it. We want to also now go back to the videos that we talked about, my journey 4 years ago when I was raising awareness of PTSD, walking from Toronto to Montreal. This was towards the end of day 2, and here you go.
Alright guys, I'm in Curtis. This is about 12:20 right now. I tried to see if I could get further, but I need to crash right now. So I'm in Curtis. I don't know if you can see the Ricochet over there chilling. I have no idea what's in front here. I know I'm parked behind a church. Hopefully they don't tow. Oh well, they can't really tow my Ricochet, but they can maybe do something with it, like throw it away or something. But I am in Curtis. Let me see if you can see me. I'm gonna go where there is light. I'm just trying to charge my phone. Alright. Okay, hopefully you can see me now. So I'm in Curtis, and I'm gonna just pause here for tonight and get up early morning and try to get to Port Hope by tomorrow. Like I say, a few things I had to sort out today. I had to deal with the Ricochet, fix it up a little bit. So anyways, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the work goes on. Once again, remind everybody why I'm doing this, and so we can continue to talk about the wounds of war, talking about the genocide of 1994 against Tutsis, and what we are now experiencing as we get older, and the fact that we want to actually build a better life, but many of us have these issues that has to be dealt with before we can get there. And that's why I walk. I walk because I went through it. I saw and I understand how hard it is to go through those things. And so this walk is to raise awareness to that, and to make sure that we take care of us, we take care of each other, and we remember others. That sometimes you get caught up in your everyday life, and that's okay. I think I said this earlier. If you're not taking care of you, if you don't think you're the most important person in your life, and probably nobody needs you. You have to take care of you first. But once you do that, then you gotta look at others, and you gotta care for other people as well. And so, it's in that spirit that I do the walk. It's not going as I planned in terms of how far I would go. I feel great. I'm healthy. I feel good. I mean, tired. Yes, my feet. Sometimes I get to places where my feet just give up. I'm dragging this thing. Like last minute, I'm dragging it. But it doesn't matter. The idea is to get to Montreal. I don't care how I get there. Well, I do care how I get there. I know it's gonna be painful, and I expect that to be the case. Excuse my, I think my phone is ringing. I'll get back to you guys.
All right, so as you can tell, that was the end of day 2, and I really looking back and thinking back at what I was going through, it feels like I was in a good place. I know, as I said, they're tired as hell, but just being able to finish a couple of days in and thinking about the rest of the journey to Montreal, I didn't know what to expect. And as I said, we're gonna show you all of this. We are bringing you back. We are sort of reliving these moments. But even for me, sort of looking at those footage is a bit harsh, but it's good. It's one of those things that I had to do, that I did, and I feel like it was worth every pain, every moment, every second that I went through the pain. There are days that even people on the road saw me and they were like, "Man, this guy needs help." But through it all, the encouragements from the community, the encouragements from people, the Canadians, as I spoke about earlier, was enough to push me past the line and all the way to Montreal with my Ricochet, with the cold and everything that came with it. So yeah, that was day 2 of my walk from Toronto to Montreal. On Monday, we'll bring you day 3, And obviously, we continue bringing you interviews from across Canada, reaching out to African Canadian leaders, businesses, and organizations. In the meantime, stay safe, keep the distance, wash your hands, and pray that we get out of this lockdown. Have a good weekend.